We were in the courthouse, and the judge that day said, "This is a big deal in Canada. You know why? Her granny is sitting in court, and her granny was a truest Canadian living on the land, but because of a government policy, she spent 13 years in residential school. And when she came out, she couldn't go to university and she couldn't hire a lawyer. But today, her granddaughter's going to be a lawyer."
You are loved by God. Well, welcome to See, Hear, Love for this incredible conversation, our Indigenous voices. And I have two incredible women with me. Amazing, wonderful, dynamic influencer, world changers, Holly Forche and Stephanie Joy Stiers. Woo! Welcome, ladies. Welcome. This conversation I know is going to be deep. I already know it's going to be emotional, but I also know I'm going to learn a lot. We're going to learn a lot from you. So thank you so much for being with me today. Holly, I know where are you, Holly? In Alberta.
Yeah, I'm between Calgary and Banff, close to Banff.
Banff.
Yeah.
Close to Banff. And Stephanie, you are?
Six Nations, Southern Ontario.
In Ontario. Southern Ontario. And I'm in Burlington, Ontario. So we're coast to coast to coast across Canada here for this conversation. But before we get into your bios and questions, I want to do land acknowledgement, a land acknowledgement of where each one of us is present, is coming from today. I think it's really important that we do. And so, Holly, why don't we start with you with your land acknowledgement, where you are, and then Stephanie, and then I'll share mine from Burlington.
Well, thank you, Tansei. I'm so happy to be here. And I love that we do land acknowledgements as proper protocol whenever we start off a meeting to acknowledge whose traditional territory we're on. When you think of it, Canada's been here for a couple hundred years, but we have been here for time immemorial. And I'm actually doing a documentary right now that's a land acknowledgement. So while the land acknowledgement is being spoken, there's images of the land. So let's not just do like a ritual of the land acknowledgement, just like we're here. Let's think about the land. And so it's so beautiful here at my cabin. I'm in the traditional territory of the Blackfoot people who are Kainai, Sika, Piikani, and also Tsuut'ina and Stoney Nakoda. And so we honor ancestral lands. And so thank you so much for allowing us to do that today.
Thank you, Holly. It's beautiful. And Stephanie, your land acknowledgement for where you are.
Sago, everyone. My name is Stephanie Joy Stiers. I'm from Six Nations of the Grand River Territory, Haudenosaunee, Mohawk Nation, Turtle Clan. My land acknowledgement is a bit different, and I speak from my reality or truth. I speak respectfully and honorably as I acknowledge my homeland and my reality. Today, please think about who first lived on the land you're standing, sitting, or lying on right now. We know that Columbus did not discover the North America, nor did the Europeans who preceded him. This land was, and still is, Turtle Island, already inhabited from time immemorial by thriving traditional territories and confederacies of Indigenous people. And we are still here, in spite of intense and prolonged attempts by church and state to destroy, assimilate, and colonize us. We're still here. All I'm asking you to do is remember this with us. Today, I challenge you to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. If everyone does their part, educate, share, celebrate, we can create a ripple effect and then a wave of healing over the nation-to-nation treaty agreements that currently exist. Nawa when, Gunalunkwa, just love.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Beautiful.
And I am in Burlington, and I would like to acknowledge the land on which I sit, lie, and gather today as part of the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. This territory is mutually covered by the Dish of One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Iroquois Confederacy, the Ojibwe, and other allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. And so I thank you, Stephanie and Holly, for your land acknowledgement. And I believe that I really do. I believe all meetings and conversations started in land should have a land acknowledgement. And so I so appreciate that. But before we get into our conversation, I have to introduce you to the world. Because wow, and wow, Holly and Stephanie, my goodness. Okay, so I'm reading out your bios and I'm like saying to my husband, oh my goodness, we have world changers, influencers coming on this conversation, and I'm honestly, I was blown away and I'm humbled. So I didn't take really anything out, but I'm gonna say a lot, so it is gonna be a little bit long, because I think it's so important to celebrate what you have accomplished, what you have done, what you've journeyed through, the hard work that it has taken for you to create your businesses and your presence in key places. So here we go. Let me gush. Receive the gushing, Holly and Stephanie. And I really, as I say this, it is a celebration of you as a woman, as an Indigenous woman. So here we go. So Holly Forche is a Cree Dene from Fort McKay First Nation, Alberta, born in Treaty 7 territory. I love this. Both of you are businesswomen. Both of you are entrepreneurs, and I love that. As an entrepreneur myself, it's like, yes, girl, boss women, we're making things happen, and I love that kind of women. Maybe that's why I just love the two of you, because I love women that see a need and make things happen. So, Holly, you own the business of Nisto Consulting that specializes in the development and delivery of Indigenous awareness trainings to government, industry, agencies, schools, and businesses. You've participated in projects involving traditional land use studies and special places mapping and elders and community members interviews and film production and community event planning. And Holly, you've also have a proven facilitation background addressing topics such as cultural awareness and family violence, child abuse, drug and alcohol education, bullying, anger management, and conflict resolution. Wow. It's incredible. Holly, you've been involved in the Alberta film industry since the 90s, so you were probably 11 when you started, is what, it doesn't say this here, Holly, but I'm going to say 11, particularly in Indigenous-themed productions such as North of 60, and other film credits include The Assassination of Jesse James with Brad Pitt, who honestly still is my, movie crush. If I was going to say who's my crush, it is Brad Pitt, so I'm so jelly of you.
He's a very nice man.
Oh, is he?
He's sweet.
Is he? I want to know, yeah.
He's like a farm boy. He's like really nice.
I feel like he has a tender heart.
He's so tender.
Jen and Angie and now with J-Lo. Come on, you guys, back to Bennifer. I don't mean to get off, but now Bennifer is back. That's what I'm hearing. So he is sweet. Brad Pitt is sweet.
So sweet. He is. Yeah. I worked with him for 6 months. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Did you crush on him?
No.
Sorry, no. Holly, did you? No. Okay, but he's just a sweet guy. Okay, that's good for me to know that the crush I've had on him, that he's a nice guy.
Yeah, he's such a nice guy.
Yeah. Okay, and you've okay. Oh yeah, back to your bio. Oh yeah. And also, Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee and The Revenant. Can you say the same thing about Leo, or
I didn't?
Or what do you say about Leo?
He's an amazing. Both of them are the best actors. They're both amazing on camera. I didn't get to meet DiCaprio. He's very focused. Brad Pitt is very, always making sure everybody's okay. He would put parties on for the crew, rent out a whole restaurant, give all the food and drinks for his crew. He was very, it's a little bit different, but they're both incredible on camera and actors and professionals.
Now, Holly, do you think we should invite Brad to a See Your Love conference or party? Do you think he would come?
Yes, I think he would.
My husband in the next room is just like, seriously, Melinda? All right, Holly. Oh, it's so great. We could talk about that. That's another show. Holly is also the recipient of the 2016 Institute for the Advancement of Aboriginal Women. Can you pronounce this the Esquwa?
Esqueo, which is the Cree word for woman.
Oh, Esqueo.
Yes.
Award for Culture. Yeah. Beautiful.
Thank you.
And 2018 Alberta Aboriginal Role Model Award. You are mama of 1 daughter, 2 sons, and a kokum to 3 granddaughters.
Yeah.
Is that super busy? How's that?
It's the best. It's medicine. They're medicine. They're my
Is
pandemic
it?
buddies, and they're medicine.
Okay.
They're smarter than I am, that's for sure.
Next generation, next generation.
Hmm.
Oh, that's amazing. So, Holly, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm so glad to have you back on the show, and we're going to have a lot of fun.
Thank you so
All
much.
right, Stephanie Joy Stiers, born and raised in the beautiful Six Nations of the Grand River Territory. You are Mohawk from the Mohawk Turtle Clan and the president CEO of Marketplace Solution, Inc. It's a First Nations consulting firm that specializes in community revitalization,
Wow.
leadership management training, and Indigenous research. Come on, you two.
So
Why
good.
are you not like ruling Canada? Why are you not like
getting there.
prime
We're getting there.
ministers?
Right?
Okay. Oh, that's what I want to hear. Because I'm like, really? Okay, the two of you. Stephanie, you have had over 18 years of experience working with Six Nations community, which again, you started like Holly at 11, started really working in employment and training, program evaluation, and strategic planning. You've also worked for a number of government funding providers, such as Ministry of Training, colleges and universities. Wow. Ontario Library Association, Community Access Program, Indigenous Affairs and Northern Development Canada, Human Resource Development Canada, and you visited over 30 countries to learn of the culture and their
Wow.
ways of governance. You are focused on the return on investment for Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island, as well as future Indigenous generations to come. And in the spring of 2017, Stephanie, you recently completed your Master's in Public Administration and Governance at Queen's University.
Wow.
And you're presently completing, are you presently or are you finished your
No,
PhD in Policy Studies?
I'm completing. I'm almost done.
Okay.
Like a couple more years.
Woo! Good for
So
you in
proud
policy
of you.
studies. Yes,
you.
public administration and governance at Ryerson University. I'm not kidding, ladies.
Amazing.
You're putting so many, I don't want to say putting so many of us to shame, because I would never want to compare you with all the other women. That's not my heart. But I'm really proud of the two of you.
Thank you.
That's a lot of hard work
you.
and focus, and I want to get into that a little bit more in your story. But I'm just, thank you for being with us, and
Thank you.
I kind of sit at the feet of giants like you in so many great areas. But, you know, this conversation, I really wanted to actually just call my two girlfriends together to really just see how you're doing. I think that's really, you know, it's not a formal, I don't want it to be like this formal interview, but I really, as a girlfriend, as sisters, that's what you would do. You would call up your girlfriends and go, how are you doing? And in light of the latest news, in light of, you know, the discovery of 215 remains of children discovered at the residential school in Kamloops, BC, I think for me as a woman, I want to first acknowledge and listen to your grief and anger and sadness. So how are you doing? And just be honest. And not, I guess, specifically with the news, but maybe just an overall. Holly, how are you doing?
Yeah, I think that the first response when I heard it, I responded in the thoughts of a mother and a cookum, a grandmother, to the children that, you know, we don't know what the causes of death are, but they didn't have a comfort of a mother or a grandmother or their daddies, you know. And and then it went further. I started thinking about, what about the other children? They didn't have any help in their grief. They were probably so full of fear. I can't imagine the horror that they went through. And you know who probably dug those graves? Other children. And so I just think, but you know, honestly, we're not surprised. We know the stories. When they destroyed my mom's residential school. So, you know, most residential schools have been destroyed by survivors out of a visceral reaction, you know, just out of their anger, their healing. And under my mom's residential school, there was baby bones found. So that means that they were practicing infanticide with babies. And so we know the stories. And so I wasn't really surprised, but what has really surprised me, I'm not kidding, Mel, I have had thousands of messages this week through Instagram, you know, LinkedIn, phone calls, and I just can't keep up responding to everybody. but the outpouring of allies like yourself, I really appreciate you even giving us a space to have this conversation. You know, allies that are saying, you know, um, I don't know what to do. Sorry's not enough. I don't know what to do. And the thing that really has been my focus, of course, is always my family. That's first, always. But also, I have a lot of young Indigenous women who are mothers, young mothers, and that are like just, you know, like Stephanie, very successful. And they're saying, I can't stop crying. The grief, I mean, it's just all the feels. You know, we live in grief and trauma, but it's swelling right now. Like we go, you know, it subsides and then it swells. And so I think that, you know, it's really practice self-care. We have a cultural teaching of a wellness model, which is emotional, mental, spiritual, physical, of a medicine wheel where it's all connected. And I think we all really need at this time to highly look at all those components, make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, especially within our cultural ways. And so, yeah, it's been a tough one, that's for sure. Thank you for asking.
Thanks, Holly. Stephanie, how are you doing today?
Well, you know how you say share with your girlfriends and you just get around and talk. Well, I'd write a research paper. I'd put together a PowerPoint, get on Zoom and teach. That's me. I'm weird. But with this, I, I, I was horrified. However, I was not shocked. Why? Because during my studies in policy, I learned about Duncan Scott, and he was a civil servant who was involved in Aboriginal affairs throughout his career, and he actually mandated the school attendance in 1920, and he oversaw the operation of the residential schools. And one of his quotes was, I want to get rid of the Indian problem. Our objective is to continue until there is not a single Indian in Canada that has not been absorbed into the body politic, and there is no Indian question and no Indian department. That is the whole object of this bill. So for me, yeah, I was horrified. It was terrible. I've heard stories about children being killed, shot, murdered, raped, beaten, for speaking their language, trying to practice their culture, wanting to be with their families. They've been so much trauma, so much trauma. And this is passed down to the next generations, and that trauma persists. And one thing about Pam Palmater that I remember, she's a big advocate and activist for Indigenous rights. She talked about how we respond to trauma. We don't lash out and hurt anyone, we hurt ourselves. So, in this situation, we need comfort. We need you to sit with us and listen. Don't speak. Some people are saying, "Oh, just get over it. Get over it." Well, how come we have to keep going through this? This is trauma. We all grieve differently. We all face these hardships differently. And I'm calling on Canadians to stand with us. Feel with us, cry with us, see through our eyes what we've experienced, and just stand with us and say, you know what? We're going to fight for justice. We're going to fight to see this change, because genocide in Canada has to stop. We think it's something that isn't present today. It's still present today. You just don't see it. It's covered up subtly. And you think that the governments and the institutions that you've trusted for so long are without fault. Please, please educate yourself. Look into the truth. Look for the truth. And then that's where the justice is going to come, because then we'll stand up. If we're not a voice and don't stand up, it's going to continue. That's, if you think we can just go on living our lives the same old way and doing the same old thing, that's insanity. It's not going to change. We need people to band together for the cause.
It's good.
Thank you.
Wow. Yeah, that's really it's hard to hear you guys. Like listening to your stories, my heart actually is hurting in that, that it wasn't, this is what I'm hearing from the two of you. It's not a surprise.
No.
Nope.
This has been, and I think that's what makes my heart hurt, is to have something happen over and over and over again. Mainstream has kind of caught on it for this story, but you and your people have been dealing with this for generations and generations, I mean, and you've been speaking and saying the same thing, and it's like no one's listening. And I say that because I got this quote, and I really want to ask you about this, because it kind of hits into what you both said, but also about being heard and how important that is. But from the Assembly of First Nations National Chief Perry Bellegarde, he said, quote, "Survivors have been telling these stories for years, and no one has believed them." What, Holly, when I say that, and Stephanie, I'll ask you the same question after Holly, but how does that make you feel when you hear that? Your thought, the truth, the importance of truth and history and belief. Like, I know it's a bigger question, but I'm just trying to understand and get to how you're feeling and your truth and experience.
I feel like I've said that too, that nobody was listening to me. I remember when I was a child and I was in school and I would be telling people and they thought that I was lying, that there was no such thing as a residential school. And, I do Indigenous Awareness, and I literally have had thousands and thousands of people across Canada in my sessions. And I've had thousands and thousands of people say, I had no idea. I didn't know about that. And, a few years ago, a commission that went across Canada, they were led by 3 incredible leaders that are lawyers. They had a whole team. They went across Canada and they listened to 7,000 survivor stories. And the reason we call them survivors is because 50% of the children that got taken never made it back home.
Yeah.
And so they listened to 7,000 stories in 300 communities. So this is different areas in Canada, different years, but their stories were all the same. I was at the unpacking of the report. I've studied it, and they said, that the stories of home were those of love. They were loved. They were taken from perfectly okay homes. When they got apprehended, and that's where emotion came in the story, when they were kidnapped, the experience in the school was that of neglect and abuse. And it wasn't just the priests or the male on the kids or the female on the kids. It was kids went after each other. It was, people hurt others, and it was a very violent place for children. And when they came out, they really struggled. As a matter of fact, they say that 90% of residential school survivors have a mental illness, depression, anxiety, of course, addictions, more severe forms. So what they did is they compiled this report and they presented it to Canada in 2015. Canada adopted it, and they said, we are going to respond to the 94 calls to action. And, we haven't really, it's reconciliation, but we really haven't seen reconciliation. And so we do know that only 10 of them have been completed. And so, we saw that, and it, died down a little bit. And then we see the 215 graves, or children that, not graves, but 215 children that were buried. And this story will, eventually be not so much present as we see it today. But, I don't know when, I agree with the national chief. Like, we've been sharing these stories, and we just really want, more response, just like Stephanie shared with us earlier.
Thank you, Holly. Stephanie, your thoughts about that no one has believed them. And it could be even no one has believed us. How does that make you feel when you hear this? I mean, you've been hearing this, but I think just informing me, because I'm just like, if I know the feeling when, I say something and someone doesn't believe me, how I feel, right? Like, what? Right. This is the truth. How do I have to convince you? It is, and they're like, no, Melinda, no. Like, I know that inner feeling, the angst, the stress, the pain.
Good. Good
So
point.
Stephanie, what are your
Well,
thoughts on this?
for me, I understand that why people don't want to admit it or say that it's happened or chime in and say, you know what, we really feel for you. That's horrific. That's happening and still going on today because it tarnishes Canada's reputation. It
Oh.
tarnishes
Mm-hmm.
Canadians' reputation. It says, this is what happened. You were part of it. You're part of the problem, not the solution. Um, and if you're not vocalizing um, against these injustices, then are you part of the solution or are you part of the problem? You know, these are
Mm.
really hard areas to grapple with, hard truths to grapple with. And you know what? It's okay. It's okay. I understand because if I were white, non-indigenous, and I was on the other side, I would be, I would probably feel the same way. You know, it wasn't me. I didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, right? I would probably feel the same way. But
Mm.
my moccasins are on the other shoe, on the other foot. I'm indigenous, so I have to work through this. My grandmother was in residential school, and you know, she talked about the horrifics of it to family, never to me. I didn't know about it till just recently, that was shared with me. But I know
Mm.
other people who were in residential school who talked to me about it because I want to know. I wanted to know what happened. And they would talk about um seeing sorry, seeing the children being murdered. You know, one nun kicked a 5-year-old in the throat and she died on the spot, and they told them the children to just walk over her and go to class. Like, this is horrific. And
Mm-hmm.
people have already been advocating to check all way before these graves were found. We're advocating for you know, the government to check the sites, the residential school sites, for bodies, for graves of our children. At where I live, we're close to the Mohawk Institute, and
Mm-hmm.
there it was said that the kids that were killed or died, um, they were buried and a tree was buried over them. And you know what? There's many trees there. There's many trees there. And I think it's time and you know, for us to find our children, all of our children, and bring them home. You know, there was something I seen on Facebook and it was a quote and somebody was saying, you know, they just when this grave was opened up, you know, one of the little children said, "They finally found us. We can go home." Like, you know, they never actually heard the voice, but it's a picture. It's a
Mm-hmm.
picture. It's something that should tug at everyone's heart. I mean, these were children. They're helpless, vulnerable. They trust us as adults to take care of them, and they were denied that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, Stephanie, that's so powerful. I think I agree with you so much. Like, I'm just loving what you're saying. It's so powerful, and it's a hard truth. And, you know, Canada takes great pride, and we are known globally for being nice. We're not nice. Our nation has children from coast to coast to coast that were stolen
Yeah.
and, neglected, abused, and buried across our nation. And that's what we built Canada on. And, racism is an uncomfortable conversation because even a racist will say, well, I'm not racist because I don't wear a white hood
Mm-hmm.
or whatever it is. But
Mm-hmm.
we have to, go beyond that. We have to be actively anti racist. We have to do the work. We have to learn the truth, as hard as it may be. And
Mm-hmm.
it's such an uncomfortable conversation. Canadians, we get that you're uncomfortable, but we've
Yes.
been living with that uncomfort for generations.
And it's time to heal. It's time to heal together.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow. It's a lot.
It's a lot.
Like I'm feeling a lot, and then I'm thinking, and you and your families and generations have carried a lot. Like I think these conversations should be in every conversation for people to listen and wow.
I
I
do have
want to
to say
oh
too,
go
Mel,
ahead.
like I thank you for just saying that because, a lot of people have been reaching out to me and saying, I just feel so bad and I'm sorry and what can I do? And I'm just like, I just sit with us. Like
Mm-hmm.
I can't comfort you right now. I'm going through a lot myself,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? But people have been
Yeah.
actually like calling me, and a lot of my messages I'm not responding to if they have that attitude in it. I'm thinking, I can't help you right now. Read the room.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to just comfort my sisters, my,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like
Mm-hmm.
yourselves, like people that I care for, and my family, of course. So thank you for just saying that you are feeling this and you're sitting with us and you want to hear. That's perfect. Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's amazing. That I think that's what
Mm-hmm.
we're looking for is that support. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, there's been a lot of injustices. They're still occurring,
Yeah.
subtly. And it's time
Yes.
to educate ourselves. Even our people as Indigenous people, we need to know the facts. We need to go in
Mm.
with the ammunition to I don't like to say fight, but
Yes.
to stand up for
Mm.
justice. We're a very humble people, peaceful people, kind, loving, and
Yeah.
you, and that's honorable and respectful. But when these things happen, we can only take so much. And I
Mm-hmm.
know it's an attempt to break the spirit and to break us, but God created us. The creator, Swan Diso, created us for a reason. We are here for a reason. We have purpose and we belong here. And Turtle Island is where he put us. We didn't come here and discover. We were here. He put us here.
Mm.
And I celebrate that. And I love that, North American. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
And it every cell in my body loves it. And I know our ancestors are here guiding the way and the truth and showing us the path that we must follow to be strong and to seek that justice. And we will one day embrace the justice. We just need to stand together in unity and power.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And I think that that's so powerful. I just wanted to add that, after 150 years of colonization and unilateral decision making by the federal government, um, we're so kind
Yep.
and generous
Mm-hmm.
and full of humor. In our communities, there's so much laughter. We're highly successful. We're
Mm.
resilient. We're determined. You know, After all that,
Yep.
we still are practicing our Indigenous way of knowing, way of being, and we have that beauty. It makes me so proud.
I'm
Yeah.
very proud. Like even just hearing because in all the conversation and what you your families have been through, you would think it's so justifiable to
Yeah.
not be funny anymore, to be kind or to be generous or to continue the way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we've seen many people do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's justifiable, so I'm going to be a different way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to, and that's absolutely beautiful. That's a testament
Mm.
to you and your communities and your families and the generations.
Mm.
And I think that's the thing. I wish more people knew more Indigenous people. I feel like that's one thing I have had conversations with girlfriends where it's like, we need to know. We need to have friendships, deep friendships over dinners and conversations so that we know one another and we don't assume things about one another and we don't have stereotypes about one another. It's when you get to know somebody that it changes everything. When you actually get to
Yes.
know them as a person their lives and their loves and passions, that's when everything changes. Everything changes, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
Everyone's
Yeah.
reality is different. Everyone's truth is different. Everyone's belief is different, you know, and to embrace that, to learn from that, to support that, and to encourage that is beautiful. Like with the Charter of Rights, I think it is, talks about being us being a mosaic
Mm.
country.
Mm,
Well, you know what? That's wonderful. But we need to start with our own indigenous peoples, the North American indigenous people first. You have to embrace there. When you come here to
mm,
Canada, yes, you can practice whatever religion, your culture, your language, all of that. It's so beautiful. That
Mm.
was something that the government tried to steal from us, and we're trying to actually revitalize it today.
mm,
And we're
Mm.
trying to, because it's part of our identity, who we are. I know growing up for me, I wasn't as strong a person until I started to learn my language, my culture, the traditional ways, and then and the
Mm.
truth, and then that's when there was this fire that came within me that burns so strong today that I can't put it out,
mm,
and I just have to speak the truth.
mhm.
Mm.
Wow. Speaking of, Stephanie, as you were sharing a little bit about your life, I want to hear about your lives. I think I love actually with all of my girlfriends. It's interesting. Growing up, I never had a lot of girlfriends. I was a guy's girl. Do you know what I'm saying? It was easier to be with guys, hang out with guys. They're so easy. You have a fight, and then they're like, yeah, we're cool. Whereas girls would have grudges for
Yeah.
years. And so I just stayed away from women. I'm not kidding. I was just like, it's so much easier to hang out with the boys. But here's what you know, right? You start hanging out with the boys, the girls get jealous because you're hanging out with the boys, and you're like, but I don't like hanging out with you. Boys are easier. Like it's a mad cycle and circle. But one of the things that helped me finally get girlfriends was I actually was encouraged
I'm your
by a mentor
girlfriend.
to
I'll
say,
be your
there
girlfriend.
you go, thank you. But
Be
one
your
of the
bestie.
things
Yeah, we're
yes,
besties
please.
now.
Yeah, we're done. This is it. Here it is. The three of us forever. I'm going to get it like tattooed all the way down my arm. Holly and Steph and Mel forever. uh,
Mm.
but one of the things I was encouraged to do was actually hear about them, know about them,
Mm.
versus I always make assumptions, so I'd stay away from them. But one of the encouragements was
Mm.
hear their story. Where do they come from? What do
Wow.
they like? And I was like, oh, they're like, yeah, Mel, that will change everything about how you develop girlfriend
Is
relationships
that amazing?
because
Now
you may.
you're making a living. You're doing, this is your
Totally.
business?
Isn't it
Wow.
so ironic?
That's
Thanks,
crazy.
Alanis. Thanks, Alanis Morissette. Isn't it so ironic that my life has turned from don't like girls and only hang out with
Yeah.
guys? Okay, I've got a women's show. That's true. It's a good point, Holly. I never
Yeah.
saw that connection.
I love it. That's the title of your
But
next book.
it is totally ironic. That's it. The book's going to be called Ironic. But I think part of it is to know your story. So, Holly, I know that, we could have 10 hours to share, but I think just for myself and even for our listeners and viewers even, to just hear about your life and story, where you come from, your journey, and sort of how that sort of shaped you
Mm-hmm.
into the woman that you are today and what you're doing. So let's start with you, and then Stephanie, I'll ask you the same after Holly. But yeah, we'll just listen and sort of lean into hear about you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking that. You know, uh, we're Cree Dene from Fort McKay. Our traditional territory is north of Fort McMurray. And my mother spent the first 6 years of her life, like I said, being totally loved. She didn't speak a word of English, living totally off the land. So she's the truest Canadian there is, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
totally traditional. But because of that government policy that Stephanie was talking about, that it was the law that Indian children were to go to Indian residential schools. The RCMP came by dog team. It was Christmas time, so the river was frozen, and they came and they took my mother and her two sisters, of course by force, kicking, screaming. It was really emotional. and took them away. So my mother was 6, my auntie was 8, the little auntie was 4. So can you imagine
Mm.
someone knocking on the door and taking your children? And that's exactly what happened. The
No.
community was so full of grief, and they had no idea where they went. And of course, the little girls, once they got to Gruard Indian Residential School, they had no idea where home was. And the conditions there were horrific and neglect and abuse in every way. And when you're 18, your funding gets cut off. So they actually put you on a bus and your ticket takes you to Edmonton. So
Oh.
my mom gets off on the streets of Edmonton. She has no support, no money, no skills, no self esteem. And so she said that most of those survivors on those little kids ended up as skid row casualties. Many of them ended up with prison because they were charged with vagrancy, and a lot of them commit suicide. So, long story short, here my mom meets my dad, and who was a geologist working with her cousins up in the oil sands because they knew the land so well. And he was doing the early exploration work in geology. And so he would hire them because they were experts on the land. And he developed this great friendship, and he had heard about the little girl. So every time he was in Edmonton, he kept an eye out for her. And
Mm.
love healed my mom. So, um,
Wow.
so I have 2 brothers that are twins, and the 3 of us, raised by those 2, we were soaked in the culture. My dad, they wanted to do the opposite of Indian residential school, where they took out the culture. They wanted to put us in the culture. And the other thing was, my mom was highly driven. I don't know where her determination, her feistiness, her
Mm.
resiliency comes from, but she had an incredible resume. She started giving back. And I remember back in the day, we weren't even allowed to go to university. And
Wow.
I started, yeah, we weren't allowed to attend a post secondary university. And the other thing is, we were under the Canadian Indian Act, which was created in 1876. There were so many rules of oppression in there, but it also said that we couldn't buy or sell. So that means we couldn't have a job or we couldn't be business
No
people.
way.
So we
Mm-hmm.
don't have generational wealth,
Wow.
right? We don't have that. That's why poverty is our biggest issue in our communities. And so, all of a sudden I started seeing entrepreneurs.
Mm.
I started seeing people go to university. And my family pushed me. When I was very, very young, already thinking of business ideas. I started working at a young age, and I just really wanted to be a mom and be domestic. And just, my mom wasn't that domestic and a mom. Of course, she wasn't. Look who she was raised with, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
was just like, I just want, but they really pushed me, which was so great. But I had a lot of anger and I had a lot of hurt from our history. And I
Mm-hmm.
was, you know, I just didn't like white people. I have to admit it. And I just,
Mm-hmm.
the other thing is that sometimes I was even ashamed of our history. And that reflected on, I don't feel so good about myself. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I was about 20 years old, I um, started a brand new journey of faith. I became a follower of Jesus, and I just started reading scripture, and I really saw scripture, and I found some really traditional people that we'd sit on, especially my Lakota or Nakota adopted grandparents. And they just said how amazing it is to be an Indigenous person and follow Creator. And they would
Mm.
share all that. And I really did work well on my wellness and my healing. And I just think it's so beautiful for me that I realize that the more forward I move, I'm bringing my whole little tribe with me. And success breeds success. When one of
Mm-hmm.
us makes it, there's a whole bunch of youngins watching. And so, I've really worked hard, but also, I realize that, um, it wasn't easy. It, it, it wasn't an easy path. And so sometimes I just have to look at myself and go, okay, I'm proud of myself. You did good, Holly. And just hearing you gush over me this morning, I'm like, and just reading my bio, I was like, oh, that's pretty awesome, really. Like,
Yes.
damn, we're
Woo.
deadly after we make it through all that stuff. But So yeah, that's my little story, and I just want to say thank you for letting me share that because it's really an incredible, just like what you shared, Mel. You can take something that has happened to you that is, can be seen as negative, but that doesn't define you. You can create something else, through opportunities that come to you, for choices that you make, whatever it may be. We may all move forward, and I think I'm living testament to that, and so are my children. I remember the day that my daughter became a lawyer. We were in the courthouse, and the judge that day said, "This is a big deal in Canada. You know why? Her granny is sitting in court, and her granny was a truest Canadian living on the land, but because of a government policy, she spent 13 years in residential school that has now been classified as a cultural genocide. And when she came out, she couldn't go to university and she couldn't hire a lawyer. But today her granddaughter's going to be a lawyer.
Oh,
Yeah.
And so
oh,
that's, and then
wow.
for my granddaughters, that's really the norm. When I was on CTV the other morning, my granddaughters watched it and they sent me a text and they were like, "Cookum, you were really good on TV today. We're so happy." They think it's normal. They think this is like, but we worked hard to get here, right? So
Amazing. I know too. Wow, Holly. I know too that you did a documentary about your mom.
yeah, I did. If you want
Because I
to,
think people are going to be like, the story of your mother coming out of residential school and then being so driven, because the story could have
amazing.
gone very differently. Her life could have gone very differently based on when she left and what she decided to do or choose to do.
She's amazing. You can find it on YouTube. It's called A Mother's Voice. And honestly, that's a perfect title because my mom was not allowed to speak her language. So that means she couldn't speak for years, right? She's a little girl. She can't speak, and she couldn't even comfort her sisters or speak to her sisters. That was forbidden. And anytime the kids say, "ow," or "that hurts," or "don't do that," or they had any emotion, they were like, "don't say that." But now we have look at, we have a voice now. And so I really wanted to share my mom's story, A Mother's Voice,
And that's on YouTube.
on YouTube. Yeah.
So proud of you, Holly.
Oh, I'm
Again,
so
I
proud of
think
you.
it's
Thank you.
so important about choices and decisions. I think what you said is that you don't, many people have allowed past and hurt to define future and who they are going to be. And as I'm listening to your story, one of the things that keeps coming to me is, no, from your mom, dad, you, family, you changed that. You didn't live in that space and blame, and it was, no, now we're going to kind of move forward. And the granddaughter as a lawyer and your mom, it's incredible. It's an incredible story.
Because I worked in film for a long time as, an actor, a wrangler, a stand-in, a stunt person. Just doing the work that I'm doing now, I just really wanted to share stories still. We're storytellers, as you can see. And film has a far reach. So I created a film company. And just this morning, I was editing a film that we're producing on this incredible human that is from Sutton. His name's Brent Dodging Horse. And we're doing a documentary about him because he was a professional hockey player. And so I was editing it this morning, and that his approach is the same. We don't fight, we educate. That's our way, is to share that, to share those stories. And it was so timely because before the 215 children bones were found, Ethan Bear, who plays professional hockey for the Edmonton Oilers, received just a ton of racism towards him. And we were like, that triggered all of us. This is before the finding at Kamloops. We were all like, oh my God, it's still going on. And we took pride, like, here's this young man that we're so proud of. And we felt so protective of him. And so, we had like in a week to incorporate that in this edit of the documentary, because we're like, this stuff triggers us. It's a well-worn path for us. And so, I just keep being in awe of our people every time I hear us talk, and we're so generous
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
Definitely.
kind in our approach. I love it.
Fantastic. What a story, Holly. Amazing. So great and inspiring.
Thank
Stephanie,
you.
let's hear a bit of your story and how you came to being this passionate advocate and boss woman that you are. So, yeah, tell us about your background.
Well, thank you so much for allowing me to share. And so my paradigm is a tad bit different. So I was raised on Six Nations, and I didn't have parents who went to residential school. I think, I'm grateful for that. I, I wouldn't want anyone to have to experience that, because it's so horrific. Sorry, I'm real emotional, but it's
Yeah,
just,
it's okay.
uh,
Mm.
just bear with me. Um, but I know that my grandmother, she would talk about the redcoats were coming and she'd have to hide. And they would hide her because they knew if my grandmother was out on the street or just in the yard, they would just take her. They wouldn't ask questions, nothing, just take her. So my grandma always talked about that. I was blessed to know my great Dura. So I would sit with my great Dura, and she'd be in a rocking chair and she'd have a long silver braid. She was beautiful, and she'd
Mm.
talk Mohawk. She'd speak Mohawk. I didn't know
Mm.
Mohawk. I was probably 3 or 4. And my grandma said I would listen and I would talk back with it, like talk to her in Mohawk. I'm like, really, Grandma? I'd be so excited. But then when we got to school age, um, I'd hear my grandma speak in Mohawk, and then I'd be like, Grandma, what are you saying? Grandma, teach me. And my grandma would
Mm.
go quiet. No, she wouldn't teach me. And I know she was trying to protect me. Um, and it was really difficult, to look back now because I didn't know. I didn't know about residential school. I didn't know about traditional teachings. I was Christianized from a little girl, from 5 years old. All I know, both sides, my mom, my dad's side, Christian. That's all I knew. I love white people. I love black people. I loved everyone. I thought everyone loved me. um, it was just it was amazing growing up because the elders, my great aunties, my great uncles, they were all part of the church, and I'd hang with them all the time. They'd always want me to come home with them and spend time with them, and they'd teach me things. It was beautiful. Then my mom and dad divorced. My dad raised us, believe it or not my mom, my dad. And my dad taught us to be strong, us women to be strong. We're from a matriarch society where the women are the leaders and the women are the ones who make the big decisions. And so that was instilled in me. um, so yeah, I'm kind of a strong voice, strong person. I maybe get a little too strong, but you know what? Uh, It's something that I was gifted with from the creator, from Swandi. So, and I have to embrace it and I have to let it flow.
Yes.
And my dad, he was very smart. My dad was a genius, a literal genius. And so he went through school and he also ran businesses on the side where he'd get people jobs with him to do like cultural field work, and then they divide the money, the profit. And he actually got a scholarship to a university. I'm not going to say the name because I got a story for it about it. And my dad, so he went to study mechanical engineering. And when he was there, he'd write perfect papers, like, math and all that stuff. And the professor said, I can't give you a perfect mark. No one gets a perfect mark. And so my dad was like,
Wow.
okay, that's fine, whatever. And then he
Hmm.
would be going to school there and he'd get caught in the stairway of this university, and non indigenous people, like guys, would beat him up. because they didn't want my dad to succeed. And my dad just went through it anyhow. My dad, you know, he's passed now, but God rest his soul, he was an international consultant in mechanical engineering for industry, big industry like Georgia Pacific and Domtar and those big industry. He went around the world. He was asked by
Wow.
Beijing, China, to stay, and what would he want? Do you want a mansion? How many wives do you want? You want a driver? He was promised all these things if my dad would stay, and my dad said no. I love my family. You know, my dad could walk into a big place like industrial, I don't even know I can't remember what he called them, but a drying mill. And just by the sound, he knew exactly what was wrong. And he could fix it like that and save them millions of dollars. Like,
Wow.
that's my dad. And so growing up, he pretty much told us, you know, don't count on a man. You count on yourself, make your own money. You move forward. And when the other big thing, so he was a big influence with me in my life. My mom as well, because she taught me just love everyone, which, you know, I try to do. It's hard. It is hard. It's difficult.
Yes,
right?
it is hard.
But
All of us are like, yes.
right? So, and the other big influence in my life was my director when I worked at Grand River Employment and Training, and she had a lot of traditional teaching come into the workplace. Had people come in to teach us the language. She would come at things, business, and moving our community forward from a perspective of our ways, our ways of knowing, our ways of being. And for me, it was just so enlightening. She was the one who first helped me to understand what happened about residential school, failed government policy, all these things. And so then I went into, decided at my job that I'm going to work on another degree. And then here I am today working on my PhD, because as I worked through this, you know, I began to know who I was. My identity was secure. I felt stronger than I've ever felt in my life. And so now I feel that it's my calling to pass that knowledge down. I work with youth a lot and talk about failed government policy, why we are where we are. What can we do to move our people forward? What can we do? How can we do that? So, yeah, that's kind of my story in a nutshell.
Wow. You know, there's a lot as I'm listening to you about, you know, mom and dad. You know, that's been something that, you know, I just realized how important the older generations, mom and dad, parental figures are. You know, as I listen to both of your stories, your mom and dad were key in seeing you and making changes and encouraging and championing you, right?
Yeah.
The same as me. My dad, you know, here I am like 4 foot nothing, and I'm like, Dad, I want to be a basketball player. I want to be Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and you know, Dr. J. And my dad's like, okay, I'll put up a basketball net for you, Mel. I'm not joking. Then I wanted to be Tony Hawk and be a famous skateboarding success. I'm not kidding. So my dad made me a skateboarding ramp in the backyard. Then I wanted to be Pele, the famous soccer player in the world. Out came the soccer goal, and I think him and my mom laughed a lot because, you know, they're like, well, I don't think she's going to be the best, but here's the thing, what that did for me, it meant honestly, I mean, everything I thought I could do, really, but what that meant was it built a confidence in a young girl who's adopted, who really had the world against her in a lot of ways back then. And it actually built into me this confidence that, you know, when people believe in you and you can do it, you can do it. You can go for it. I think that was key in my own self-esteem and building in who I am. And even what I'm doing now, my dad and mom both, you know, teachers, broadcasters, people in media, you know, seeing that modeled so strongly, I think that definitely brought me to where I am today. But I just love the presence of your parents.
Yes.
And the influence on you.
One thing I forgot to mention was my dad, since we were 5, made us plan our life out. It was like,
as one does, as one does at 5.
Yeah, right. Even if it was a trip to Canada's Wonderland, we had to plan it right out. And it was like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, but it taught a lot. I'm a real planner today, still.
Yeah, no,
Wow.
it's good.
I'm going to do that
So
with my
hearing,
granddaughters. Yeah.
yeah, do
Right?
the
I like
plan.
that. I like that tip. Life
Yeah.
hack.
Yes.
Yeah.
They'll
So
end up
hearing
like you,
about your
Stephanie.
lives, yeah, I, I know this could be another show. So just really one thing that as an Indigenous woman, what can we as women leaders, women influencers, women, learn from you? Just a life lesson, something that you have, just one thing you've really taken along the way, a motto, a saying, scripture, whatever it is, that you're like, this is what's really grounded me or helped me or influenced me. Holly, what would you say?
I would say it's not selfish to put yourself first. You can't pour from an empty cup.
Yeah.
It's not selfish.
Yeah.
You have to put yourself first. I think if you love Creator, you love yourself, everything's going to work out for you. But it's really about self-love. Be gentle on your just the same way that we love our children, my grandchildren, love yourself in that same manner.
I love that. And I think that's in any, the visual where if there's an airplane crisis or anything, mom always puts on, right?
Yeah.
The oxygen mask first so she can help her children versus the other way around. And so I think, and that's hard. That's a good one, Holly, because it's hard. Like a lot of mothers and women say it's always about others, giving out to others, and there's nothing here. And how can you serve and lead empty and dry and on fumes? You've got to make sure that you're filling yourself up, you're loving yourself, being kind to yourself, speaking kindly to yourself. Absolutely, 100%. I love that. Stephanie, what about you? A life lesson.
I think I'm going to kind of build on Holly's comment, and that's because I want to honor my mother as well. My mom, she was cut from a different cloth, I'm telling you. She was Mohawk as well. And so I'd go have a lot of struggles during teenage years because I had to go to school off reserve. And so I wasn't treated really great sometimes. And, and so I'd come home and I'd share my parents were divorced, so at some points I'd go to my mom's and I'd share with my mom what was going on, hoping my mom would chime in with me, like, yeah, oh, they're terrible, oh my gosh. I guess that's what I needed as a teen, I don't know. And then my mom, she would shock me because she would say, oh, babe, oh, babe, oh, babe. And I'm like, oh, yeah, Mom, what? She goes, just love. I'm like, Mom, what? What? Yes, love. And I'd walk out the can, right? Or whatever was there. I would be so angry. Why can't she see it from my paradigm, from my perspective? Mom, what are you saying? And so now it's really crazy because I'm going through life and you know what? There's some situations you find yourself in where that rises up, that evil Stephanie wants to come out and say not so nice things. But here's my mom in my ear, babe, just love. And I'm like, oh my God. And so it like, turns me and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, Mom, yes. And then it calms me down and I just love. I proceed with love. And it's so funny because I'd walk into the room, maybe my sister, my brother and I, and maybe we're, being mean to each other or saying not so nice things. My mom would be lying on the couch and we'd walk in and we knew we weren't, doing the right thing. And my mom would just give us the look like, and then we'd turn into these angel children. And it was just, and we knew the next thing was going to be, babe, just love. So
good words. I mean, that is the way of, as we follow Jesus, that is the countercultural way of living. And it's hard. It's so hard. And that's that's the truth. I mean, I think of the life of Jesus. I mean, can you imagine all the stuff that's happening to him and his father saying, just love? Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
Every time I put myself in Jesus' place, I'm like, really? These people,
Right?
not only these disciples I have that just can't stay awake, don't know who I am, argue about
Right.
who's going to be on my right and left, who's my favorite. Come on, I think the same thing, but that is the call. It is to love,
Yeah.
right? Is to love
good.
ourselves, is to love others, to love Creator. It's
Yeah.
to love. And I think, imagine if we all chose that and decided that, what honestly the world would be like.
Oh, yeah.
We don't have a lot of time left, so I want to circle back because we started off with how you're feeling today about the latest news with the 215 remains of children found at the residential school in Kamloops, and hearing your honest thoughts. And so I want to end with how I can be an ally, how I can be a support to you. And maybe you can give 2 points each from you, but just practical things or just encouragements on how I can better support you, stand with you, speak for you, support you in any way. So, Holly, why don't we start with you? What can I do?
Yeah, so this is a really big thing that I do in my awareness training, where people are like, what do we do? How can I help? What, and the people, especially this week, have been reaching out like, what can I do? The Truth and Reconciliation Commission has 94 calls to action. So start by reading that document. You can get it online, you can get the book, but let's remember that the part of reconciliation, because reconciliation is a buzzword, part of it is the truth. So learn the truth. Whatever interests you, type it in. If you're getting, your books, your podcasts, your audiobooks, listen to our music, buy our art, start, appreciating our culture. The thing with the rule with art is buy from inspired Indigenous, not Indigenous inspired. Therefore, you're appreciating culture, not appropriating culture. Go to museums and cultural centers to learn not just about our history, but our collective history. Take courses. And I think that we need to let's stop saying, what can I do for Indigenous people? And let's start saying, what can I learn from Indigenous people? We have a rich culture, and we are not a problem to be solved. And I know that there is this history. I know it's so like amplified today because of what happened, the findings in Kamloops. But let's not focus on the struggle. Let's focus at the successes. We are amazing. I research success not just in business, but in athletics, science, music, all different areas where we have done really well. And because whatever you focus on gets bigger, right? And if you ever hear anybody talking negatively about an Indigenous issue, person, or community, let's change the narrative. And I would just say the biggest thing, I've been, how you have a word? During the pandemic, my word has been shalom, which means peace, blessing, wellness. And I'm praying for shalom for Indigenous people. That's my focus right now, praying for shalom.
Yeah, I want to join you in that. I would definitely do that in prayer, but those are great things. Holly, practical things instead of what can I do, how can I learn, what can I learn?
Reconciliation starts with me.
I love that.
We all say that? Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Stephanie, just some last 2 points. What can I learn from you? How can I be a good ally and friend to you?
I think just learn, share, celebrate. So learn from, us as a people, just like Holly was saying. Tap into those free courses. University of Alberta has some free courses that are out there that are great. Also, Pam Pometer, oh my gosh, she has all kinds of YouTube videos. Cindy Blackstock. There's so many Indigenous champions that are out there that you need to tap into. Read those educational academic articles. They're hard to digest, but sometimes you can find someone who just kind of summarizes it for you, and that's sometimes easier. And when you learn these things, and like Holly said, and you hear someone talking negatively about First Nations, Inuit, or Métis people, step up and say, hey, why are you saying that? What, can we have a conversation around that? Why do you think that? Help me understand why you're saying that. So then they'll share, because that thinking, that mindset has come from somewhere. Whether it's our institutions, because it was all set up by colonizers, whether it's that's manifesting in that mind of theirs, or what it is, maybe it's they're not educated, and you provide solutions for them to become educated and provide, share your understanding, and also, if there are some events going on with Indigenous people, maybe there's a protest, go there, stand there, just stand, just stand with us. And another big thing is also when these events are happening, like when they had the different churches and institutes, when these children were found, the 215 children were found, and they were putting the shoes on these establishments. I had a doctor's appointment because of my eyes. I had surgery in Dundas, which is 25 minutes from me. And I pulled around the corner. I began to cry because right as I was turning, I seen the public library had these 250 shoes in remembrance of our children that were lost and need to be brought home. That was there. You can do what you need to do. Put up a sign in your window. I don't know. Do whatever comes to your heart when you're reflecting on this. Do it. And just use your good mind. Good mind teaching is one of our philosophies. And we always think 7 generations ahead and make those decisions based on that. So think about that when you're thinking about celebrate that, you're here with us. We don't call you immigrants. We don't call you settlers. That's not what we called you when you got here. We called you brothers and sisters. And we love you, and we embraced you. We taught you to survive here. And you know what? We want that beautiful, loving relationship. And as my mom said, babe, just love.
Love. Amazing. Stephanie, I love that. Well, Holly Forche and Stephanie Joy Stiers, I could chat with you all day, but we've got work to do. There's lots of work for us to do.
There is.
And so I just want to thank you so much for being with me, for sharing so honestly your stories, your thoughts and wisdom, your learnings. There was so much that I was learning. I was writing tons of notes on my paper. But I want to leave you with this, that, we acknowledge your history and we love you. We support you, we stand with you. And I hope that as people are listening and watching, and even for myself, that we will make key and courageous and brave, loving choices for you. And for your kids and the generations to come. And so I thank you. I'm humbled, deeply honored that you spent this time with me. And shalom to you. God bless you. And so much love to you. So thank you so much.
Thank you for creating this space for us. Thank you for being an ally. I appreciate you so much, Mel.
Yes.
Thanks, Holly.
And so nice and so nice to meet you, Stephanie. I just really enjoyed hearing from you as well. Thank you.
Yeah, it was great to meet you as well, Holly. And I just want to say, another thing my mom said was, when you love, it's not work. It's love. It's not work.
Yeah.
So maybe we need to change our mindset and just operate from love, from that good mind, and just know, Gunalunkwa, that's Mohawk for love. And, even if you learn that one word and speak it out, Gunalunkwa, that's love in Mohawk. But Nyawa, for inviting me. I had a great time. And I feel better knowing that this message is going out in this very, very, very delicate time, and yet horrific time that we're all walking through together.
So together it is. Thank you guys so much. And we will talk soon. Thanks again.